Welcome back. Let's take a quick look at what's happening on the covers of the dailies this morning. I have, of course, here with me on this one.
Yes.
Now, let's start off with the Punch newspaper, and today is Wednesday, October the 2nd, 2024. October 1st, protests record low turnout nationwide. Kaduna, Plateau, Nasarawa, others shun rally, heavy police presence in Osun, Niger. Police arrest 10 in Kano, Port Harcourt, as NANS back President's Youth Confab. Right beside the masthead there, petrol imports drop by 3.58 billion litres after subsidy removal, according to federal government. Flooding worsens despite 180 billion naira spent on dams. Port Harcourt refinery misses 7th production rollout deadline. And it also says here, federal government extends rice subsidy program to states. 5 suspects arrested for allegedly killing Ogun fisherman. And Iran launches 180 missiles at Israel. Federal government plans Nigerians' evacuation. That's what we have on the cover of the Punch.
Yeah, so I'll just touch a bit on the protests yesterday. I mean, there were, talks about the protests even, before, towards the end, that was last weekend, into the October 1st celebrations. And so far, there were no turnouts at all. Very, very little people came out, to protest in, different parts. It just sort of also begs the question, because it's also an offshoot from how the end bad governance protest went, right? After the protest, that's the end bad governance, there were quite a few summons and, arrests, from, the government there were some of the facilitators of the protests were arrested. So I guess this also affected, the protests, the low turnouts of people at the protest ground yesterday. But in all, we've experienced, there wasn't violence. It was a quite peaceful protest, just as people, also, made their requests and demands, in the course of it. So, yeah.
So we have other papers here with us.
Daily Times newspaper, making the headlines here. Mixed reactions trailed Nigeria's 64th independence anniversary. On the riders here, we are retooling economy to serve Nigerians better, says Tinubu. And Independence Day speech confirms APC's insensitivity to Nigerians, says the PDP. And CSOs to protest high cost of living across cities. On the top of the paper here, just right at the top of the paper, troops arrest 8 terrorism suspects, 2 kidnappers, informants in Taraba. And just on the right there, Nigeria at 64, Obi seeks independence from state capture and to suffering. Nigerian carriers in urgent need of support, say aviation experts. Despite clampdown, selling, spraying of naira notes at parties still persists. You can find more of that story on page 5. Nigeria imported 20.30 billion liters of petrol in 2023, says NBS. And just right at the bottom of the paper here, Bobrisky, NCoS affirms suspension of 7 senior officers. And finally, Middle Belt minorities demand secession from North orders. They cry decades of marginalization fault British colonialists. And that's all on the cover of the Daily Times newspaper.
Quite a few interesting developments in the Bobrisky case there. There's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of letters and all sorts of summons going back and forth. Now this is an update I hadn't heard until this morning. Suspension of 7 senior officers. So I guess the investigation is getting somewhere.
Yes, it is. It is. Also, Very Dark Black Man was also summoned, I think, in the House of Reps yesterday or 2 days ago. He turned up, but Bobrisky didn't. And, you know, based on some of the allegations he made regarding Femi Falana's involvement, he apologized to him. And, well, we'll get to know more and learn more in that regard in the next few days.
So there's so many disputes, so many conflicting sides to the story, and it is seeming a little more complicated than necessary at this point.
Yeah.
Everyone is just waiting for where the whole thing is just going to end, what the final decision is going to be,
right.
Final verdict is going to be.
Yeah, and then I also forgot to mention the prison controller also at an event or at a press conference also mentioned the reason Bobrisky was not put in prison because of his sexuality. He's a transgender. So he gave reasons as to why he wasn't put in the men's prison. Also because, you know, he was putting him right in the den of, you know, sexual offenders that would have done, you know, unimaginable things to him. That was the reason he didn't put him, you know, in the prison cell, given reasons as to, you know, why he was given a separate apartment during his, just, you know, during his sentence, basically. So, I mean.
All right, so a lot of information I never thought I would, you know, hear about. As soon as Bobrisky was released, I just thought it was, you know, done. But it just felt like another can of worms was opened.
Yeah, well.
And now nobody can stuff all the worms back in again.
Exactly.
Daily Independent has this headline. Tinubu draws flack over plan to convoke National Youth Confab. Youth Confab will be useless. Implement 2014 National Confab, says MBF. It is designed to divert attention from governance, says Pierce. And it also says here, revisit report of past Confab committees. Forget Youth Confab, says Shell. Quite a few other bylines there. Police explain deployment of officers to RESEC headquarters. Rivers APC restates support for October 5 local government election. Federal government distributes 2,000 CNG-powered tricycles to youth. My government won't surrender to barefaced blackmail, says Fubara. Emirates resumes operations in Nigeria 2 years after suspension. And protesters in Benin, Osogbo, Akure ask Tinubu to reverse harsh policies. Police suspected miscreants dispersed protesters in Rivers. What pops out for me there is the Emirates Airlines resumption.
I saw that.
And it did feel like a sigh of relief until I thought about the costs of those tickets. So when they stopped operations 2 years ago, the price of those tickets was a lot cheaper.
It was.
Now, even the cost, apparently, the cost of getting a visa has probably doubled over time. So them coming back into operations, yes, it's a great development. However, is the situation the same? Are people still interested in, you know, taking that particular airline to that particular country? I guess time will tell.
People will, because when it comes to the Emirates have a standard and they've never flouted or they've never, you know, gone below those standards. Also for convenience, for comfort, luxury. I mean, people who can afford it will definitely patronize them.
There are other airlines like, what do they call them now? Qatar and the other one. There are a lot of airlines that have taken that route and provided other means for passengers to move across the Emirates. So, I don't know. The average Nigerian is looking for a cheaper airfare.
Well, we'll see. I actually really would like to touch on the federal government distributes 2,000 CNG-powered tricycles to youths. And this is also piggybacking to the Tinubu's speech, the president's speech yesterday. Where he in one of the things that he highlighted was the unemployment and what the tools that were put in place to ensure that the unemployment rate drops. Use it through LEAP, which is, you know, an organization that, you know, has been assigned, you know, to cater to youths when it comes to unemployment. One of the things I think you also touched on, you know, regarding the youth was also putting together a youth conference where conversations around, you know, youth participation and leadership, you know, where issues, you know, around the youth can also be addressed.
Sure.
So I think the federal government is, you know, working in that regard, and I fingers crossed on, you know, the outcomes, you know, on some of these, you know, developments, basically.
2,000 tricycles, that's quite a large number.
That's quite a number, right. So
I've been wondering about the CNG conversion of vehicles. I'm talking about actual saloons and four-wheel drives now, and apparently that is ongoing in Lagos.
Yeah, and hopefully I hope that also aids transportation as well, because I mean that's also been an issue with a lot of people. But hey, let's move on to excuse me, the Nation newspaper. Making the headlines here, Nigeria at 64. Military display at Aso Villa Max low-key event. President releases pigeons, cuts cake with others. Jonathan Okonjo-Iweala mark governors foresee greater Nigeria. Right at the top of the paper, just below, just on top of the masthead there, bandits leader Bello Turji defiant. And ex-U.S. President Carter turns 100. And security forces find another 66 illegal refineries, 72 incidents in 1 week. Noun Center set ablaze over rumor of likely use as IDP center. And pockets of protest in Lagos, Abuja, others. Decay in public schools, unacceptable, says Abbas. And just right at the bottom of the paper here, why government must slash $3 billion annual wheat imports by experts. FRSC operative recover 8.6 million naira at crash scene. And Makinde extends transport subsidy. And that's all we can take on the Nation newspaper.
What jumped out at me, weirdly enough, is the wheat imports. Not a lot of people know that the price of wheat goes up and down the same way the price of crude, the price of gold goes up and down. And of course, with Forex being a major issue, it's you know, created a major challenge getting the finance to import this wheat. We're talking about wheat being used for things like spaghetti and pasta, which is like a staple apart from rice for the average Nigerian. The average Nigerian has spaghetti and pasta in their home because it's considered affordable, but the prices of wheat just keep going up. So I'm definitely going to be watching that particular story and seeing how it affects the market. Yeah,
but then I would also like to say that this also should, you know, bring our attention to other alternatives, you know, based on, you know, our local, like maize, grains, you know. Let's look inward. Because, I mean, we're doing so much as a country when it comes to food, other than the insecurity that, you know, the farmers have to face in some other countries. I know that one of the things that the president highlighted yesterday in a speech was, you know, calling out to states like Jigawa, Niger State, you know, for the governors, you know, to begin to look inward when it comes to food production. So, I mean...
So, when we start making corn-based bread, maybe?
Well...
Because without wheat, we can't have that bread, that hot, fluffy bread.
We are very innovative and creative as Nigerians.
Maybe cornbread. So, I mean, cornbread might be something we could think about. All right, then, at this point, we're wrapping it up on the headlines in the dailies. Share your thoughts with us. We can't wait to see them or hear them. Use our hashtag WakeUpNigeria on TVC and tag us WakeUpNigeria TVC. Let's take a break. We'll be back after this.